So now that you've attached your armholes and understitched them, like I said, your hem lines and your side seams are still open. So what you want to do at this point is prepare the vest to sew the hem lines together. So what I'm doing at this point, I'm just trying to get to my hem lines so that my right sides are together. And I just turn my vest inside out to go ahead and do that. And to make sure that the inner lining and outer lining are together. And just make sure that you don't sew your hemline before you do your armholes. The way that this is set up, I don't think you will do that, but in case you do, you can kind of still do it, but it's a little more difficult, so it's much better to leave the hemlines open. So like I said, all I'm doing now is preparing the hemline. You're going to sew your hemline in the back at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Before you do that, you want to clip a little bit into the back V that you have on both layers. And you don't want to clip in more than a 1/4 of an inch, because if you go beyond a 1/4 of an inch, you will probably have a gap on the right side of your fabric. So just clip into it a little bit, and that just helps you turn it when you turn it right side out and give you a sharper edge. And so now I've gotten close to the V in the back, and so what I do is I like to walk the machine when I get close to the top of that point, and just walk it around that point to get it all the way around. And that just makes sure, that kind of helps too, to make sure that you don't catch that little clipping that you've put into your V. So once you're done stitching the seam allowance and you've had gone around your V, what I'm doing here, it's a little bit off of the screen, but I'm trimming some of the seam allowance outside of the V, or from the inside of the V, and that just takes some of the extra bulk out from the inside of the area, so that when you turn it, you still can maintain your edge. Once you're done with that, you want to go ahead and do your understitching at the hemline, and you're going to understitch towards the inner layer once again. And like I said, if you have your label already in the garment, it's a little easier to tell which one is your inner layer at this point. But just understitch here. You're going to do partial understitching. You can't do the whole hemline because of the shape. So you just want to go ahead, in the instructions, I tell you to understitch stopping a 1/2 inch to 2 inches from the back V, since you won't be able to understitch around that area and keep your shape. So just stitch and then stop a 1/2 inch to 2 inches out from your V. So the next step is sewing the belt ties for your side seams that will go into the side seams, and you just want to sew those at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And when you're done, turn each one right side out, and you can use a pencil, or I showed you in class, you could use a knitting needle, sort of any type of device that looks like that to turn it inside out. And once you're done with that, you're going to attach them to your garment. Once you're done turning these inside out, I do recommend that you press them to get them to lie flat, and they will have a much better appearance. So you see how the one I have there looks sort of like a tube. Just go ahead and press those flat, and on your vest front you have notches that indicate where these should be attached. And the only thing I'd say, make sure that they are attached on both sides in the same direction. So you have a point at the end of your belt ties. Just make sure that they are lying in the same direction with either the point at the top or the bottom when you do this. And just sew it in that little space between the notches at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And when you sew your side seams at a 1/2 inch, it will catch your belt loops in the seam allowance. Okay, so once your belt loops are attached, you see it here, and make sure that they're lying towards the vest front on the right side. So this just gives you a visual of what they should look like. Also, yours should be pressed. These aren't pressed, but just to give you an idea of what side they need to be on, to make sure they're not on the inside of your garment instead of the outside. So the next step after you attach is, now that your back hemline is done, you just need to go ahead and close your front hemline. So that's what I'm doing here on each of the vest front pieces. I'm just sewing the hemlines. Sew your hemlines at a 1/4 inch seam allowance on each piece. And you don't really have to turn the vest inside out to do these. You can if you need to, but you can just kind of, because they're still open, you can kind of flip them over and just sew the side seam, and sew the hemlines, and then you can flip them back out. So here I'll just show you what your hemline should look like once it's closed. You see that? Then you're going to understitch up into that little peak, that V peak in the front, and that's the only area that you want to understitch to, towards the inner layer where your lining is, just to make sure that rolls inward as well. But you do not have to go all the way around that edge. You're just going to sew that portion.